Welcome to Illustrated Book Reviews. I'm Urban Banshee. Picture Ready Player One with a more compelling protagonist, and without all the pop culture references. With that in mind, I present today's book, Gamescape Overworld by Emma Trevane. There is one more thing I would add to that pitch though. Add in a pinch of good omens. Diet good omens. I'll explain that aspect in a moment. The story takes place in a future that isn't all that far away. The Earth has been ruined for the sake of progress, and is basically past the point of no return. Instead of worrying about that though, everyone instead plays the only game that exists. Chimera, a VR game created by the company with the same name. There are cube buildings in every city where the game can be played. Chimera gives out prizes to players for completing levels. The prizes in question are biotech body parts. The main character is Miguel, a teenage boy who is very good at the game. But his motivation comes from the fact that he actually needs a specific biotech part that he will earn at level 25. A new heart. Miguel was born with a weak heart, and doctors have said he will not live past 20 before it gives out. Unfortunately, each level is harder than the last, and it's not looking like Miguel will reach level 25 before then. The company Chimera announces they will be holding a contest that will award prizes even better than what can be gained at level 25. If Miguel can enter and win, he would have his new heart in a few months instead of years. I found this premise to be compelling, and I was rooting for Miguel throughout the book. Unfortunately, this book wasn't very popular, and despite ending on a cliffhanger, there will never be a book 2. I would tentatively recommend reading this book if it still sounds interesting, but I might have some opinions on why it didn't do better. A word of warning, there will be spoilers ahead. We start with Miguel on his way to play Chimera. There is a party with a bunch of his schoolmates that evening to celebrate the start of summer vacation, but he figures he has time. He gets to a cube, puts on the VR headset, and right away, we have my biggest gripe with the book. The gameplay sucks. I mean, both the way it is described and what is actually played. First, the setup is weird. Everyone who plays gets their own little room that they will stand in, just large enough that you can't touch the walls when you stand in the middle. That isn't the weird bit. That would be the fact that you have to actually do all the actions for real that you want mimicked in the game. Running, jumping, climbing, dodging, absolute full movement needed. All this is done while you stay in one place. I could understand a treadmill maybe, so you feel like you are running, but you are staying in one place. Nope, you indeed need to jog in place. A literal nightmare. Miguel even mentions that one time he accidentally crashed into a wall and damaged it when dodging and misjudging his movements. It's not terribly important story-wise, but I want you to remember that anytime Miguel or anyone else is doing something in the game, they are also doing that same thing in real life, but also while not moving out of the center of that small room. There's also full sensation feedback. Get burned? You feel that. Fall down a hole? You feel the falling and the hard landing. There are no gloves, boots, or any mention of why the visor can make you feel things that aren't there, but I'm going to let it slide for a different plot reason. At least the actual VR game is compelling, right? Personally, I'd say no. It's boring when it is being described. So much is left for the reader to try and figure out, and whole chunks of the game aren't described at all. To illustrate this issue, I'll walk through the first glimpse we get of the game. If at any point you are confused by what I'm describing, don't worry, I was too. Each player is given 4 NPCs to order around, 2 guys and 2 girls. They have no intelligence but follow all orders. Miguel starts off in an empty room with a window. No mention is given if there's anything beyond the window. I assume it's just blank like the walls. Miguel has the 2 NPC guys lift him up to reach the window. He taps the window, it falls, and Miguel catches something. The item is not described, but apparently there is an indent in the wall that Miguel can place the item in. A door opens, and there is a corridor. Miguel walks down the corridor, and it splits. Only one path is correct, and there are no hints or anything to tell a player how to decide which way to go. What would happen if you went down the wrong path? Who knows? Could be an hours-long detour, or insta-death. I'm getting flashbacks to gaming in the 90s. There's no Nintendo hotline to call here. In fact, in this world, something like that wouldn't be allowed. Helping each other in the game, sharing tips or walkthroughs is considered cheating. Miguel, though, isn't sure which way to go and states to his visor, status update, which I'm guessing is like a GPS ping telling others where he is in the game. He then says any tips, and someone sends back a single word in reply, wrong. I thought tips weren't allowed. Shouldn't even asking be ban-worthy? Besides, how did this random person even answer him? It acts like an in-game chat function, but besides Chimera being a solitary game, this is literally the only time anyone communicates this way. This and other points in the book read like someone who isn't terribly savvy on how different aspects of gaming or the internet work wrote it. There's no mention of forums or social media sites, but characters gain information online like those things exist. Towards the end of the book, Miguel will make a post that goes out to literally the entire world. If this book was written in the early 2000s, I'd probably let it slide. But this was written in 2016. When I went searching for information on the unreleased sequel, I found out Emma Trevane doesn't have a social media presence. The only social media of hers I could find was a WordPress blog last updated in 2013. That is no knock against the author. Having an active social media presence shouldn't be a requirement to be a successful author. But that being said, I felt it was obvious that she didn't actually have first-hand knowledge on how teenagers or even adults that grew up with the internet use it or how it works. Let's just say my mom wouldn't have any problems with how the internet is portrayed in this book, but she doesn't even go on Facebook. The one-word hint of wrong is apparently vague enough to not get caught, but Miguel instantly understands the hint. Wrong is the opposite of right, and another opposite of right is left. So Miguel goes left. At the end of that corridor is a keypad. Miguel again immediately knows what to do, since the code is obviously the same code that he figured out several rooms back. It's his girlfriend's birthday. Miguel just intuitively knowing things will be a running theme. It's not explained how he figured out that it was his girlfriend's birthday before, and I'm not sure why it couldn't have been figured out here instead. Are there penalties to guessing wrong? We'll never know, it just turns out he is correct in his guess. But instead of a door opening in front of him, the floor drops down. Miguel falls and sees a narrow path surrounded by fire. The path is only wide enough for a single person at a time. Not terribly difficult or interesting gameplay. Walk forward, turn left, fall, walk forward again. He makes it, and at the end there is a jump with lava in a pit below. He jumps it, landing safely on the other side. 2 of its NPCs don't, but are immediately replaced with duplicates. So fast he wouldn't have noticed if he hadn't literally watched them fall. Miguel just knows that a boss is up ahead. End scene. It would be too interesting if we got to read about him actually fighting the boss. We could also figure out on our own if he was a good gamer or not. So no action scene for us. Miguel is both exhausted and potentially going to be late to the party. He'd been playing for 10.5 hours, which, woof. I could in theory understand getting invested in a video game for hours, but when it also requires physical exertion, I'm just saying it probably helps that there are literally no other games to play. An interesting trait I do appreciate is that Miguel has a biotech finger that he uses to check his heart rate. It's a consistent trait and a way for him to check the status of his heart, making sure he doesn't have a heart attack while playing. Miguel meets up with his girlfriend Anna and they head to the party. The party itself isn't that noteworthy, but everyone gets a notification. The game runners, who are extremely private, will be making an announcement in an hour. Cut to a new scene where Chimera HQ is. We aren't told the name of the city, but we are told it doesn't matter since all cities look the same. Spoiler, it's a dodge since the headquarters are in the same city as Miguel, something that is revealed towards the end of the book and is supposed to be a twist of sorts. We meet Blake and Lucius, the creators of the game. They banter with vague dialogue. Meet the Good Omen characters. The book makes it immediately clear they are not human, with information like they've known each other a long time, don't feel pain, and they act like they don't have emotions. They definitely don't care about each other, though there is a begrudging respect. But they aren't all that much fun. The book goes a bit too hard on the whole no emotions bit. It is never outright stated which one is the angel and which one is the demon, just color coding and having things stated like Blake doesn't mind lying. It's not that I need it spelled out for me, but the book tries a little too hard to have a point about both sides being nearly the same. The outcome is characters that feel constrained and bland. The book keeps cutting to these 2 characters who just vaguely exposit for the audience, and though I didn't dislike their scenes, it made me feel like I was watching a TV show that had to keep cutting to other characters to assure us that indeed things are happening. The scene ends with Blake and Lucius agreeing that it is indeed time. Back to Miguel at the party. Everyone watches the announcement. Chimera is ready for Phase 2, which will be play-tested by 200 players. Those players will be given a team of real people instead of NPCs. The rewards will surpass what a player can get for reaching level 25. Miguel sees this as his chance and wants to apply. Anna tries to talk him out of it, saying he needs to stop playing completely. He can't stop though. It is literally his only chance at getting a new heart. All the good doctors work for Chimera, and they are also the only way to get biotech. You can't even pay for healthcare in this world, you have to play. Which is an interesting idea I've not really seen before. It just isn't expanded on. What about literally anything else health-wise? Broken bones, diseases, mental illness, anything that can't be fixed with swapping a body part, or would hinder playing Chimera? Hell, what if you just aren't any good? On one hand, this might have been the point of Miguel's story. It's just a shame that the world isn't fleshed out all that well. I'll bring it up again, but the story is so narrowly focused on Miguel that it is actually a detriment to the overall story. The application process for the contest has a personality test, a special level to play, and a medical exam. Every room in the cubes are booked solid immediately by people trying to hone their skills. Miguel and his friend Nick hang out at Miguel's place since they can't play. I bring this up because of one important thing. Miguel has a bootleg version of Chimera on his computer that he coded. Let me emphasize that this is cheating, illegal, but also how? He made it so he could work out what to do next when he was stuck. I cannot explain how much that this isn't how that would work. Games don't exist anymore, so there is no Unity engine for Miguel to boot up and work with. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that he is able to replicate his experience in Chimera, 1-to-1. That wouldn't tell you what to do next. There are really only two reasons for this bootleg to exist in the book. To show that Miguel is a super elite hacker, and that he is a cheater. In an attempt to justify things later on in the book, but really just creates more questions than it answers. At the special testing level, Miguel has 4 hours to beat it, and he does, with 10 minutes to spare. How well did others do? No idea. This will also be a running theme in the book. Us readers are given no context to compare Miguel to, so we are left not knowing how truly good or average he is at the game. The story makes sure to emphasize that Miguel is willing to sacrifice NPCs if it is needed. For example, he came across some water and wasn't sure if it was deadly or not, so he had an NPC touch it to test it. The NPC was turned into a mess of melted pixels. He wonders how his gameplay will differ with real people. A fair question. If your team is no longer interchangeable NPCs, you have to think twice before sacrificing a teammate. You would also need to take into consideration their skill set and how crucial they would be in the current situation. There are different team builds based on different playstyles for a reason. A tank has a very different purpose than a healer. But this isn't the question the story is asking. It is asking if sometimes sacrificing NPCs make you a bad person. Like go to hell bad. Let's set aside the absurdity of that until a little later. Miguel's parents try to talk him out of playing. Not just the contest, but playing Chimera at all. They want him to give up, accept what little time he has left, and just live his life. I felt for both sides. Who wouldn't want to fight for more time? But on the other side, he could just be wasting what time he does have. In the end, they say it's up to him. Miguel goes to the last part of the application, the physical, and is told how short his time really is. He was originally told he might make it to 21. That is no longer the case. If he takes it easy, really easy, he might have a year left. But if he continues to play Chimera, he would only have a few months, if that. Playing Chimera just put too much of a strain on his heart. The doctor tells him to make peace with the people he loves, but she won't recommend him for the contest. Miguel is heartbroken, but doesn't tell anyone how short his time really is. He hangs out with Anna and Nick as they wait for the selection announcement. Miguel ends up taking Nick aside and tells him that he gives Nick and Anna his blessing. He knew they liked each other, but Anna didn't want to be the one to break up with Miguel, feeling bad due to his weak heart. He tells him that he wants to be alone and heads to a rooftop to wait. Blake is trying to decide on the last contestant. He watches Miguel on the rooftop via surveillance cameras. He decides on Miguel, thinking his desperation will be the perfect drive. Miguel stands on the edge of the rooftop, unable to tell his family and friends goodbye. He starts to step off the ledge as he watches the names of the chosen contestants scroll across his feed. Just in time, he sees his own name and falls backwards. Safe, but wondering what would have happened if he hadn't left his feet on. I have no problems with this bit. The visual of Blake watching Miguel look over that ledge and knowing exactly why he's about to take that jump and saving him, but for his own selfish reasons, I love it. Wish the writing was better, or at least different, but plot-wise, I'm on board. Miguel gets down off the roof only to be met by people already waiting for him. They use his last name and call him Mr. Anderson. Sorry, but that Matrix reference hit me like a 2x4. He's taken home where both of his parents are, as well as Anna and Nick. Anna is royally upset at Miguel for not having the decency to break up with her himself. No one is excited about him joining the competition, but they all accept it. He also absolutely doesn't tell them what he was about to do. Every team is given their own cube to use. It is outfitted to let them eat, sleep, and stay there until the competition is over. Miguel meets his teammates, which include his friend Nick and 3 people he doesn't know. 2 girls named Grace and Leah, and a guy named Josh. Together they boot up the new version of Chimera and shock, gasp, there is a story! Or at least the book makes an attempt at saying it has a story. There is a lore dump in the beginning stating a demon has invaded the world and is destroying it. The goal of the game is to collect the items that will allow them to break into the demon's lair and destroy it. There are 12 levels to go through and 12 items to collect. Everyone can just sense that something is different about this version of Chimera. Nick picks up a gun and fires it at a wall. The effect is more realistic and the damage doesn't repair itself. They all kind of wonder if the same will be for wounds. Will damage done to them linger? Way to spoil the twist! Honestly, this right here is the biggest gripe I had with the book. Things aren't found out naturally. It would have been much more interesting and engaging if Miguel allowed a team member to get injured, both treating them like an NPC and expecting the wound to heal like in the standard game, only for the wound to follow the player out of the game. Setting very real stakes, and possibly an oh shit moment if there was a close call earlier that they had laughed off. But instead Miguel just intuits important information. It wouldn't be all that bad, but there's no through line. Miguel doesn't look at the letter A and go to D as the answer. It's more of looking at A and figuring out the answer is circle. And he is right every time. For example, Miguel doesn't trust Grace, or even like her. As far as actions go, there is no real reason. She is a little standoffish, but Miguel mistrusts her so immediately that she might just be reacting to his attitude. Nick tells Miguel that he should tell the team about his heart condition, but Miguel doesn't want to. I get his motivation a little. His heart condition has literally defined him his entire life. But his desire to win should outweigh his feelings on the matter. He will later do something horrible because he wants so badly to live, but he will put the entire team in jeopardy rather than have a conversation with them. What if Miguel wants to delegate a task to one of them, but they think he's being lazy or bossy instead of it being better for him to not strain himself? Playing with a team can be difficult, but they should all have the same goal, beat the game and get good rewards. I will be glossing over most of the actual gameplay, which is actually the same route the book takes. If you are interested in what little is in the book, I recommend picking it up for yourself. The descriptions are rather vague and sparse, so I couldn't describe what they were like if I wanted to. We cut to Lucius, who is making sure their employees are paid. Blake tells him he was going to just tell them he had paid them, but there was a computer error. In the course of their conversation, we find out that the original code allowed the players to really die. They both agreed in the end to just leave the part that allows injury, though players can really die if their brains convince them they are dead. How someone can sustain a life-threatening injury but not die is beyond me. Not that it matters. There is no moment where a player is able to mind over matter a deadly injury. The game essentially just plays like they never took death out. Once again, the book just outright reveals information that would have been more interesting if it had played out. Maybe the book was trying to give the audience a sense of suspense, give us information that the players don't have. Forgive me harping on this particular point, but the gameplay sections aren't interesting or dramatic in any way. We never witness a near miss, and have the players not realize how close they were to death. No moment where the audience having information the players don't increases the tension. Back to Miguel, who's refusing to communicate with his team. He is basically treating them like smarter NPCs. Flawed character trait or uninteresting story element, I'll let you decide. In the first level of the game, they all get split up and each team member is forced to face their worst fears. The games know things it shouldn't, things Miguel never ever voiced. It clicks for Miguel. The rooms of fear mean they are all different alignments. You know those D&D meme charts? Just like that. Nick is lawful good, Leah is good, Miguel is neutral, Josh is evil, and Grace is chaotic evil. You didn't miss anything. That is exactly what I'm talking about when I say Miguel is able to just intuit things because the book needs him to. That aside, I also take issue with the whole alignment chart thing. For so much being just told to us, it is never explained exactly how these alignments are figured out. Miguel, of course, is correct, and the book sorta implies it has to do with how you treated the NPCs. I guess I'm sorry to all those completionists out there. If you played the genocide route in Undertale, you're going to hell. The funny thing is Miguel actually says they will have to play to their strengths and play as a team even when they disagree. Meh, it won't matter that much. It really only matters at the end for a reveal. I don't like to focus too much on writing styles. I really only notice if it's really good or really bad. I more care if I was engaged and if the information was presented in a way I could understand. Which I've already mentioned this book struggles with. Phrasing is odd at times, and so many things feel like half-thoughts. It feels like a combination of the book trying to be poetic and cryptic at the same time. There is an art to withholding information, but when so much is left undescribed, it's impossible to tell what is intentional and what is delayed. For example, the color of Miguel's hair isn't revealed until page 95. The color of biotech isn't revealed until near the end of the book. Not knowing doesn't enhance the plot, but it does make it frustrating when I have to change the mental image in my head. Do not get me started on books that withhold basic world-building information from the readers, and then act all smug when that information is revealed like it's a big twist. We cut to another scene with Lucius, who walks into a boardroom where all the people's faces are hidden in shadow. The dialogue is vague and amounts to things are going as planned. As he leaves, he passes a countdown where all the numbers are zeros, except the last two. In the game, Josh pulls a risky stunt without warning anyone and gets a new biotech arm. Miguel is upset since it hadn't occurred to him that prizes could be won that way, which is a bit of a crummy move on the game runner's part. It was implied that prizes would be given to the winners of the game, but now it is possible to get what you want without winning. It seems nice at first, but a whole team is stalled when a member gets an upgrade. They have to wait for the person to recover. Also, if you don't find your prize while playing, you don't get it, and no prizes are doled out to the winning team. Josh's arm is a huge monstrosity, and they also end up failing the next level several times before beating it. Leah and Miguel talk and end up kissing. The team gets to a water level and they all put on scuba gear. My brain blue screened trying to figure out how that works. The book keeps harping on the fact that no matter what happens in the game, they're all just in an empty room. At this bit in the story, I'm willing to accept that the ability of the game to give sensory feedback that breaks all rules of reality is due to supernatural reasons. Blake and Lucius are shown to do certain things like conjure up coffee out of thin air, so even if it's never outright stated, I'll believe that the game is partially supernatural. That being said, what are they doing IRL when they are swimming? What does it look like to an outside viewer? The boss of the water level strikes Miguel right in the chest. His heart can't take the stress and everything goes black. He doesn't die though and wakes up with a biotech heart. As he rests and recovers, he checks his feet and finds out a member of a different team died. So he wouldn't have been the first. Blake visits him in the hospital and tells him he wasn't supposed to get a new heart yet, but when he collapsed, he made a choice. This is the second time Blake has saved Miguel's life, but for purely selfish reasons. I really like that as a concept, the idea of doing the right thing, but for the wrong reason. I wish the book would have emphasized it a bit more. It was only as I was writing the script that I realized it. During their talk, we find out that Miguel is valuable to whatever Blake's end goal is. Also, all team leaders are neutral, and a team member can die, but not the leader. If the leader dies, the entire team is disqualified. Apparently, the reason why this information wasn't disclosed is because they didn't want the teams to play hindered by that fact. But they also didn't know that when they signed up, they could die. It isn't a huge stretch to think losing your leader would cause your whole team to lose. In fact, all it would take is a single leader dying, and then everyone would know. It felt poorly justified withholding that information and then eventually outright saying it. Plot-wise, it would be more interesting to watch teams play carelessly, players running ahead into danger only for them to die. Their playstyle could then change, only for a leader to die, perhaps sacrificing themselves so their team could continue. Imagine a scenario where someone like Grace, the chaotic evil player, doing something to save their leader against the leader's orders. Not for the right reason, but because without the leader, they can't win. It benefits them. Running a parallel with Blake saving Miguel for the wrong reasons. Actually, it would have been nice to be able to get invested with the gameplay at all. What little we do see of the levels are vague and boring, which it didn't need to be. I was promised a book about VR gameplay. Give me the gameplay. It takes a bit for Miguel to heal, but when he does, they go back to playing. Leah gives him the silent treatment, upset at him not being honest with her. Miguel is able to play harder since he doesn't have to worry about his heart giving out. Or at least we are told this. At the end of a level, the team is told they can either continue forward or save someone. Miguel decides he wants to save a person, who then turns out to be Anna in a glass box with fire inside. The box shrinks as Miguel, Nick, and Leah are unable to break open the box. Grace and Josh bail, opting to not even help as Miguel begs them to. Anna burns to death in front of them, and the box becomes small enough to fit in Miguel's hand. Turns out that this is the item for beating that level. There had been no way to save Anna. Are there teams who didn't try to save a person? Would they not get the crucial item for beating that level then? Alas, this is never addressed. Miguel is extremely upset at having to watch someone he cares about burn to death. The real Anna is fine, but Miguel is still upset. He is also angry at Grace and Josh for ignoring his orders to help. He sends Blake a message saying they need to talk. He is awoken hours later by Blake just standing in his room. Miguel tells him he isn't interested in playing anymore, but he wants answers. Blake doesn't give him any answers, but tells him that the heart he was given has a virus. Since it isn't the heart he was supposed to win, it works better than his old heart, but it will still give out on a similar timeline. Weeks to a few months max. Blake didn't tell Miguel that earlier since he said he was going to keep playing anyway. But now that he wants to back out, Blake tells him that he still needs to play if he wants a new heart. Oh, and he does have control over his current heart, so don't go tell anyone about their conversation. Miguel and Leah have a talk. We find out what she is playing for. Turns out she has a sister who died mysteriously and she wants a memory implant, so she can know what her sister experienced that led to her death. Give me a minute. I'm reeling a bit from the implications of being able to just take memories from other people. How common of a thing is this? Could you gain abilities this way? Download the memory of a doctor going through medical school? Do other people use this as a way to figure out how someone died? What's that? We're gonna gloss over this completely and never bring it up again? Fantastic! Leah never gets a reward, and it is never brought up again to the best of my knowledge. Apparently Leah has figured out the story behind the levels. They are based on the 12 labors of Hercules. I've read this book and I double checked what the 12 labors were, and there are little to no similarities. Also, knowing this doesn't help them at all. They don't bring up what they know with the rest of the team, and at no point do they beat a level with their knowledge. Leah also agrees to not trust Grace or Josh. Let me highlight that with what we have been shown, there's no real reason to distrust Grace and Josh nearly as much as they do. Miguel is upset at them not helping with Anna burning, but he didn't like them prior to this. Back with Blake, he enters a room that only he and Lucius have access to. There are 4 glass cells, each with a person in them. Each person is entirely made of biotech. It is thought that no one has beat Chimera, but that isn't true. These 4 people are the only ones who have, but it's top secret. Even their families think they are dead. At this point, the book starts glossing over the levels even more than before. Apparently, Grace and Josh don't help that much. I say apparently because once again, we are just told this. They spend a lot of their downtime together, which doesn't bother Miguel since he spends his downtime with Leah, and Nick spends his with Anna. In one of the levels, they find an old library. A chalkboard is on the wall with a code on it. It's actually a book cipher, though there is no clue to guide them to what book. Miguel makes a guess that it must be the most famous and oldest book. It's not outright stated, but it's the Bible. The answer to the code is "Your turn, Grace," which means that Grace gets her reward. In response to this, she smiles a genuine smile for the first time. Since they can't play until Grace is healed and done, Miguel and Leah go out to eat. While out, they are recognized by a fan. Turns out they are the underdogs and are currently pretty behind, which they were completely unaware of. How behind? We never see or hear about how the other teams are doing, or find out why they are behind. This is only the 3rd reward given. Are other teams not going for rewards and just gunning for the end? Did Miguel's heart replacement solve them really badly? Or are they just slow at the levels? The whole world gets to watch all the teams, but Miguel never checks on the other teams. There is no tension or excitement for the readers when it comes to Miguel's team's progress. After their meal, they return their cube and find Grace on the top of the roof. Previously, she had been afraid of heights, but a reward was a little tooling in her brain to remove that fear. Miguel isn't happy at the idea of Grace not being held back by her fear. You gotta admit that is a pretty solid reward, though. I'd be happy to remove a few of my own issues. They all beat a few more levels, and Blake ends up checking in on Miguel. Not being able to tell anyone about his heart still having a time limit is eating him up inside. A nice ironic twist to the fact that when he should have been honest, he wasn't, and now that he can't, he wants to tell his team. We are told that his playstyle has gotten frantic, and even his team has noticed. Not that we get to see any evidence of that. Since something important is about to happen, we get to read about the next level and item. The item is a snake, one of Josh's phobias. It's also Josh's turn to get the item, but he refuses to catch the live snake. So Miguel gets creative and tells Josh to let it bite him. Isn't that like the worst end of the spectrum of his phobia? Yes, phobias can be irrational, but that absolutely isn't a smart way to go about it. But it works, and Josh listens to Miguel and lets the snake bite him. Uh-oh, the snake was poisoned, and that combined with Josh's fear of being bit, it kills him. For real. Grace is devastated and sobs over his body. The book does emphasize that Miguel was well aware that letting the snake bite Josh would most likely kill him, but he made the decision because he wants to live. We get another scene with Lucius. We find out that when Josh died, he went to Blake's side. Because he was evil, right? Turns out that unlike Blake, Lucius doesn't have a single favorite team. He's more of a numbers guy. But one of his favorites is a guy named Zach. Zach isn't new to the story. He has been a jerk and a rival for Miguel since the beginning. It just wasn't relevant to mention him. Lucius has been helping Zach, basically cheating, though any of the specifics or a general idea of how is beyond me. The people in the glass cells will be given full biotech brain soon, and the greater good is mentioned. No one has won yet, and Miguel's team makes it to the final level. None of the items they have gathered along the way load in with them, except for what they got as a reward for completing each level. Not unexpected as a reader, but a bit BS as a gamer. You get good loot and weapons all along the way, and in the final hour, it's all worthless. They each pull up the items they each collected. Only what they each collected. We realized it at the same time they do. What about Josh's items? Oops, Miguel. What was the point in forcing Josh to collect the snake if him not being here means no snake or any of the other items he got? Everything works out though. Remember that hole Nick shot in the wall in their lobby? Grace is able to go to it and pull Josh's items out. Each item has a specific use in the level, and it is actually described halfway decently. It is by far the most interesting level, and it is a shame how quickly it passes. The team beats the final boss. Miguel carves out its heart as a reward. He gets his heart replaced, this time without a virus. While he is recovering in the hospital, Miguel realizes that he never wants to play Chimera again. Fair. I would personally say the game itself was never actually fun for anyone, and everyone only played for the rewards. The book doesn't really go with this angle. It more shoots for the whole, don't use games as an escape from reality and just live your life. Lame. There's nothing wrong with playing games or using other things to occasionally escape reality. True, you shouldn't play to the point you lose touch with reality and don't have connections with friends or family. Miguel leaves the hospital before being discharged, not wanting to be surrounded by people on Blake's payroll. A week passes and Leah hasn't responded to any of Miguel's messages. Instead, she shows up on his doorstep. She has a question, but before she gets far in her conversation, there's a knock at the door. This time, it's Nick. He accuses Miguel of cheating since one of the game runners made an announcement that someone cheated. Nick believes it's Miguel since the last few levels were a lot easier. We cut to Blake, who says Miguel did indeed cheat, even if he didn't know he did. Blake was helping him behind the scenes, and he also set up Josh to die. Lucius is the one who went public with the cheating allegations, but he figures it's fine since it's time they stop pretending to be friends anyway. Blake signs the paperwork that officially dissolves Chimera. Miguel tells Nick and Leah everything. About the virus in his other heart, and that he didn't cheat. But he was told that the game would teach him who he really was. Then he knows Blake wanted him to choose to sacrifice Josh. In the final level, they had to board a ferry, but now that he thinks about it, there were only 4 seats on the boat. That he would have chosen to leave Josh behind, and Grace would have made winning difficult because she would have been upset about it. Plus, losing Josh made her lose her fighting spirit, and she was more obedient after that. The 3 of them do some research and hacking on the internet. They find out that Chimera is being dissolved. Miguel wonders what the point of the contest was then, if it wasn't a beta test for new features. He decides to break into Chimera headquarters to find out what is really going on. Shock! HQ is in the same city as them. Once there, Miguel gets on the computers and sees something that shocks and horrifies him. Cut to Lucius. Chimera will be completely shut down in a month, which he figures is long enough for the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse to do their jobs. Turns out that is what the 4 dudes in the cells were for. Blake and Lucius both know that Miguel will want answers and will come to headquarters to find them. Having Miguel spread the truth is part of the plan, though it is also because no one will believe him. Kind of a no one believes the prophets until it's too late vibe. Blake and Lucius follow the horsemen out of the building, and they have been imbued with supernatural abilities from heaven and hell. Back to Miguel, and the horrifying truth is revealed. The game had been data mining their souls. How they acted in the game and online determined if they were a good person or not. Those character alignments weren't just their playstyles, but determining if they go to heaven or hell. Leah looks up her name. She was good, past tense. Apparently Miguel's choice to sacrifice Josh tarnished his entire team. The consequences don't stop there. His choice is having a ripple effect on everyone in the world. People are taking sides, and the side they choose determines if they are good or bad. Let's stop for a moment. On one hand, I really like the idea that your actions on the internet matter. You may be a saint to the people you know in real life, but if you are the worst kind of bully online, then that is also part of who you are. With how intertwined the internet is with our day-to-day lives, you can't fully separate who you are from it. But on the other hand, the book emphasizes the game as the main reason for their alignments, that the way they treated NPCs either made them a good or bad person. Without examples in the story of why or how, I'm only left with my own personal experiences to base my opinion on this matter, and I don't buy it. NPCs aren't real, and being mean to your Sims or dropping Yoshi into a pit doesn't make you a bad person. Plus, there is the question of free will in video games. Yes, there are games that give you free reign, but there are also games that force a player to kill a certain character. It's not fair to then condemn the player for a forced action. Back to the plot. A few days pass, and wars break out, and a fire destroys the food creation labs. People hide in the cubes since they always have food. Leah predicts that diseases will break out in the cubes with all the people in an enclosed space together. The Horseman of Death goes to Blake and Lucius and tells them that their masters are done with them. They have served their purpose and become too soft from being around humanity for too long. Those two cardboard cutouts? Soft? I'd request receipts personally, but I'm not all that shocked with this turn of events. A bit paint by numbers, but I don't dislike it. Miguel, Nick, and Leah once again decide to break into Chimera HQ because they wanted more answers. It's really because they need to run into Blake and Lucius before Death takes him out. They do make an announcement using HQ's system, telling everyone the real purpose of Chimera, and that it has brought about the apocalypse. They come across Blake and Lucius stalling Death. The book gives the official reveal of what Blake and Lucius are. They aren't a demon and an angel, they refer to themselves as gods. To save himself and his friends, Miguel challenges Death to a game, since Death is supposed to be fair. Death agrees, and the three of them are given special guns by Blake and Lucius. The guns can destroy biotech, since the horsemen are made completely of it. Blake and Lucius take the opportunity to escape, while Death is preoccupied with Miguel. Death isn't invested in killing Miguel and his friends right away. His orders were to kill Blake and Lucius first, so he says he will come for them later and leaves. The end. My final thoughts? I wasn't a fan of the writing style, and so much of the world and character actions felt like an early draft. I don't think this often, but instead of a book, this should have been a movie. Having another pair of eyes to help flesh out the story could do wonders for the bits the author struggled in making interesting. It would be easier to show that the levels are based on Hercules' trials. Make the bits where the gameplay doesn't matter a montage and it flows better, while being interesting. A lot of the weird bits or things I didn't like could be explained via rule of cool, or just visually. Medium matters. I say all this because at the end of the day, I didn't dislike this book. Genuinely, I would recommend it to others if you can find a copy. Though with the warning that it ends on a cliffhanger of sorts and will never be resolved. Maybe it wasn't popular enough, or maybe the author couldn't write it to their own satisfaction. I'll never know, but it doesn't really matter. Until next time, I'm Irvin Banshee. Have a good one.